Good morning from India. A warm welcome to all again. Today we are in our second day of the Digital Media Conference. As you are aware, this conference is spread over 3 days until 4th March. Yesterday we have had a variety of sessions on digital transformation, digital subscriptions, building subscription success, subscriber retention strategy, premium newsletters, and so on. All the speakers and their presentations were wonderful. I hope you all listened to them and got few ideas at least from those to begin with, or at least expand your knowledge. Today, the keynote session is on 5 ways news media has changed forever. How to adapt to the new abnormal by Juan Senior, President Innovation Media Consulting Group, UK. For this, now I would like to invite Mr. Pradhiman Maheshwari again to introduce the speaker and moderate the session. Pradhiman is not new to us. We all have seen him yesterday. He's a founder, editor-in-chief, and CEO of MXM India, a web-based publication tracking the media and advertising. He is also the senior editor and media commentator, having worked with a variety of media entities for over 30 years. He is also a serial entrepreneur and in addition to various things, is also editing an online magazine for seniors today. Mr. Pradhiman, over to you. Before I hand over the session, I would like to give a credit to our sponsors. Platinum sponsorship by Google News Initiative and Gold sponsorship by Shibo DX, Piano and Shortbeat, and the Bronze sponsorship by PPA Media. Thank you very much to all our sponsors. Mr. Pradhiman, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijay, and good morning to all of you. Thank you for coming in early, and we would have loved to meet you in person, but since that is not possible, the virtual experience should do for now. I'm delighted to welcome here Mr. Juan Senior. I worked a bit on the pronunciation just before this, so very right. Who is, I must confess to you, one of my most favorite speakers in either WAN-IFRA conference and newsletter conference, because every year he comes up with this amazing volume called Innovation, and I have perhaps 20 of these already, and the 21st of 21 of these already, and I'm looking forward to the 22nd volume, which I'm told is going to be sent out to all WAN-IFRA members. That was a good plug for you, commercial for you, Juan. So Juan is a highly sought commentator on the media industry, speaking at global forums and quoted frequently in leading publications such as The Economist and the Financial Times. He's also co-editor of 2 annual books, the one which I showed you, Innovation in News Media, and Innovation in Magazine Media, written on behalf of WAN-IFRA and the FIPP respectively. He's a former journalist and presenter for PBS's NewsHour, EBN Wall Street Journal TV, CNBC Europe, and he has served as the London correspondent of the International Herald Tribune Television. His work has been nominated for an Emmy Award, and his television show Media Report was voted by viewers as Europe's best business program. He continues to work as a live events and television host and presenter globally. We're going to have Juan to talk to us about 5 ways news media has changed forever, how to adapt to the new abnormal. He's going to be presenting to us key insights from the innovation in news media world research. Over to you, Juan.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pradhiman, and a great honor to be moderated and introduced by an eminence such as yours. I follow your work, and obviously I enjoyed meeting you last year and before, and a great honor to have you moderating and taking questions afterwards. So thank you for your time. And thank you to WAN-IFRA for inviting me. And yes, as Pradhiman mentioned, we are obviously in the process of introducing this book, our new book called Innovation in News Media, the 2020 edition, here with you now to share with you. And what we've done this year is we've done a special edition where we have reached out to about 20 world editors and publishers, and we've asked them to reimagine the news with us, to look at the most successful media innovations in the world, which we've done every single year, and to try to give us their insight into this. As you know, the book is in its 22nd edition. We've been lovingly doing this on behalf of WAN-IFRA. We have another edition on behalf of the FIP organization. But the WAN-IFRA is the oldest and the most thorough of the books that we produce every year. It's based on 12 months of research and our global media consulting experience, and obviously our work all over the world. These are many of our clients. And I just wanted to show you our latest newsroom that just opened in India. This is Ananda Vikatan in Chennai, a vernacular, obviously Tamil language newsroom. We've opened. Some of these photographs are before the pandemic in the rehearsals, but is now finally operational, and Ananda Vikatan has gone through a very interesting digital transformation that we helped develop over many years. This is the actual warehouse of the printing paper, which was converted into this massive open newsroom with television studios for soap operas and a fully integrated digital news and magazine operation. This is some of the, it also has a built-in theater and a place for people to meet. So a very interesting case study if you want to look at cases, recent cases of our work in India. So let me just take you through the book. These 20 leading publishers and editors, we chose them from all over the world, in every continent, from Mark Thompson of the New York Times. We asked him, could you please reimagine the news for us? What are your insights? What would you want to share after your great career at the BBC and then the New York Times? We asked the editor-in-chief of Arab News, people in South Africa, the Toronto Star in the Philippines, the Straits Times, the head of BBC News, the head of La Vanguardia in Barcelona, the head of the Washington Post, the editor Marty Barron, who's just left, the editor-in-chief and CEO of Jungan Ilbo in South Korea, News Corp in Australia, Newsworks in London, the South China Morning Post in Hong Kong. Every one of these wonderful and very actively leaders in innovating media were asked for their collective wisdom, what you must and must not do. And the timing is very interesting because this began before the pandemic, and yet it obviously took on a different meaning of its own because of the pandemic. First thing most people told us, this is a moment for action. Never let a good crisis go to waste, many quoted us or told us directly or indirectly. The world may be frozen, they told us, but you must act and not wait for this storm, this terrible pandemic moment in global history to just simply pass. Pass it will, and one must be hopeful, of course. But in moments like this, when you're in the midst of a storm, you have to keep on walking, you know. Another saying of Churchill, if you're in hell, keep on walking. So very true and very relevant. Also, it's important as a leader, as an editor, as a publisher, for you to understand that you can only manage what you can control. Everything else you should treat as superfluous because it is out of control. And this is a very important insight in terms of managing a crisis or the dimension of the crisis we've had to face. Focus on what you can control. And there's a lot you can control, and that has to be your focus rather than try to put out all the fires all around you. And every trend that was there before the crisis will now accelerate into a norm. And this has become very, very true throughout the world. And we saw this at the beginning. At the beginning, some people said, well, some of these trends are not accelerating as fast. A year into this pandemic, we do know that a lot of these trends are now going to become the norm. So looking at these trends, the great saying of Lenin is that there are decades where nothing happens and there are weeks where decades happen. In our case, we could translate that to, or transport it to, there are decades where nothing happens and there's a year where decades are happening. So those trends that would have taken 5 years to become the norm have now become the norm in less than 5 months. India is no exception, the pandemic has accelerated these things at the same speed of change. And if you're still waiting for this to pass, to take action, just be aware of the fact that it's a global reality throughout. So what were these trends that are now accelerating? What are these sort of 5, 6, 7 things that really are now becoming the new abnormal? Number one, of course, is the migration of readers from print to digital. Unfortunately, people have associated paper as a vector of contamination. I know many of you have been working hard to fight back at this perception with wonderful marketing campaigns. I have the honor to judge some of your work. And you work hard to do this, and yet still the migration to digital, it's universal throughout the world, accelerating rapidly. Also the migration from ad revenue to reader revenue. We've seen a plummeting of the digital ad revenue and the print ad revenue, and yet a massive rise in people wanting to pay for news. Reader revenue, whether it's digital subscriptions, which I'm going to talk about in detail today because it's the biggest innovation we must master. And obviously you talked about it yesterday, but also membership and added revenue you can get from a reader once he becomes a member of your brand. Another big trend is the collapse, the vertiginous collapse in trust of social media platforms. As you know, big tech is under a lot of scrutiny at the moment. The role in the pandemic in spreading conspiracy theories, fake news, and putting people in danger with some of the content that they allowed to be shared on their platforms has led to a massive collapse in trust of social media. And that is to our benefit. And this is something that was picking up speed, and yet I'll talk about it in detail, how we benefit from this to great extent. It's also the end of free news for Facebook and Google. They will now share the revenue. I'm sure you've all followed the trend in Australia. That project of a law is now being introduced in Europe. It's going to be introduced in the UK. It's going to be introduced in the US, in South America, in Brazil, and so on. So the global momentum to extract a digital tax from Facebook, from Google, from Twitter, and so on, it's afoot, it's irreversible, and it's to great benefit to us. But you must address this in a very clever way. There's a big pot of gold at the end of that trail, but Indian publishers must work together to make sure you get the right legislation in place to benefit from something that has been very wrong for a long time. It's finally time to end the duopoly. This has been a duopoly. This is a campaign that started in London. It moved on to Australia, but now there's a decided movement to end the duopoly. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. There'll still be very powerful companies, but their relationship with us has to change. It has been a dysfunctional relationship, and we cannot really find a way forward with these digital platforms unless we address this once and for all. And the momentum in the first quarter of this year is irreversible, and it will come to India, and if it's not come to India already in earnest, I'm sure is about to come. Another big trend that we must be aware of is that the populist war on news media will continue and will get even worse. So any hope that, okay, this war that obviously Trump and other populist leaders started on our profession, on our vocation to publish the truth on a daily basis as best as we can, and to hold power to account, that war on us, to blame us, to make blaming the media a form of politics, it's gaining strength and is stronger than ever. And that's something to worry about, and it's something that you must work hard to fight back. Another trend that I think we must address head on is a fallacy, and that's the home newsroom, the work from home phenomenon. And everybody's been talking about this, and at Innovation, we've highlighted that this is complete nonsense. A lot of the publishers told us, look, you cannot do journalism at home. Journalism is done in the street and is done face-to-face with good editors. Perhaps you can, from home, shift some design aspects of it, some IT maintenance, and some copy editing, but journalism cannot be done from home. So the idea that somehow we will make newsrooms disappear and all work from home is nonsense. Journalism is done in the field with sole of your shoes journalism, meeting sources, witnessing events, doorstepping politicians. Face-to-face journalism, not Facebook, desktop journalism is what creates journalism worth paying for. So we must understand that humans need a work-life office-home balance. It's for rest and for family. Office is for work. Productivity of home workers is down 40% globally. There's a massive Zoom burnout. Even the commute to your office, as frustrating as it seems, it helps humans to order their minds, to have clear thinking, and to produce very good work. So this idea that we have to re-engineer our newsrooms to all the work be done from home, it's nonsense. Will there be a flexible model where some people will work from home a few days of the week? Yes, that can be. And perhaps that's what this massive global crisis has changed forever. The 9 to 5, 40-hour a week from the office, Monday through Friday habit. That could have changed, but not for a complete radical disappearing of office work. People want to get back to their office, they want to share, and they want to do work that is shared and collaborative. Another big trend that we've seen, and a bit of warning here as well, not to fall into this trap, is the trend to shut down your print operation. We've seen a lot of publishers saying, okay, that's it. My readers are migrating to digital, so I'm shutting down print. And with this, I'm going to tell a narrative that now I have a digital first operation. Well, if you can do that, fine. But don't do it out of desperation and to convince yourself that you're digital first. Desperate measures are for desperate times, but they must not become the norm. You may be in crisis, you may see that people are not buying your print newspapers anymore, but you can only become digital first when your revenues are digital first. So don't give that away. Don't give away the remainder print revenue you've got just because you want to pretend that you're digital first. That's a big mistake. We've seen lots of publishers rush into this head on without a lot of thinking, and it has to be done when you are digital first. When you're digital first, you then become digital only and you drop the print publication. Because the trick is to become digitally sustainable before you become print unsustainable. And many of you are perhaps facing very high costs of the print run, and it's a very big industrial cost. But unless you're growing that digital revenue, you're going to destroy the print revenues that you have remaining. So from a business point of view, it doesn't make sense to shut down your operation entirely for print until and unless your digital revenue overtakes your print revenue. Social media, it's a big trend and a big realization. All publishers have told us that the investments we've made in developing social media audiences are not paying off. And I'm aware, because I know your market intimately in India, that Facebook is huge in India. And a lot of you have made huge investments in developing social media audiences. Those investments are not paying off. They're paying off for Facebook, but they're not going to pay off for you. In many, many countries, we're talking about this year as being Social Media Independence Day or Independence Year, where social media distancing for news brands has become imperative to reestablish a direct relationship with readers. During the pandemic, we've seen a very interesting shift that justifies this social media independence year. It's the fact that people have stopped getting my news from Facebook. In the past, many people just looked at their news feed, they read the news on Facebook, and that's it. I got my news. Well, we've seen it globally, and we've seen it in India as well. People developing a habit of visiting the news sites directly each morning. They wake up in the morning and they look at the local paper and they read the local paper. And this is very, very important for us because this is a habit that did not exist before. A lot of people just were happy with whatever came to them on their Facebook feeds. Well, now they're checking our news sites. And the reason they're doing it is because in a pandemic, you really, really want to know the truth. You really want to know what's happening. And obviously what comes on your feed on Facebook could be a conspiracy theory, could be fake news, could be something that is not true. And you want to have it verified by your local news brand. And this has resulted in this social media independence dynamic where publishers have realized that it's good to have this habit and we must protect it and we must encourage it. Facebook has been responsible for a lot of the fake content out there, a lot of the conspiracy theories. And in a way, in a perverse way, fake news is being stopped as a result of this pandemic. And it was, as you know, an infodemic that started at the beginning of the pandemic and before that with populist politicians globally. But in a way, fake news is now saving journalism because people have realized that our role as fact checkers is the new added value to our journalism. And people will pay to verify fake news. People in the past would take as truth whatever they read on Facebook. They believed it, or they didn't question it too much because their life was not at stake. But when your life is at stake, when your business is at stake, when your future, your family, your health is at stake, people want the truth. They want somebody who is devoted to fact checking. So if you do credible quality journalism and fact checking of what's out there in social media, it's a new added value that people are willing to pay for. And this is something we discovered in this pandemic, and we have to use to our advantage to drive people to continue this habit, to check our websites and so on. So in news, we must trust, and this message has come across very clearly to billions of people globally. Fake news is being exposed, and so are its purveyors, from celebrities to Instagram influencers, and their ad revenue is returning to news media. A lot of advertisers don't want to be associated with influencers who've been sharing pandemic conspiracy theories, crazy cures, and they obviously have been exposed as unscrupulous people selling things without asking questions or verifying any facts or figures. So this is important. A lot of that advertising money, brands are saying, well, let's go where there's truth, where there's fact checking, where there is credibility. There's finally a global recognition that independent journalism is valuable and must be paid for. So this is a very important moment for everybody, including every single publisher in India. You must seize this moment or you will lose it forever. Journalism matters to make life or death decisions, to hold populist leaders to account, to search for answers. In a pandemic, essential services are not free. Medicines, water, electricity, and the internet are paid for. In a pandemic, information is considered an essential service that also should not be free. And people have made this realization that just like water, electricity, internet, medicines are paid for, quality information should be paid for. This is the moment to invest in newsrooms, to invest in journalism, and for you to sell it confidently, to have the confidence that people's mindsets have changed about what you have to offer. What you offered in the past for free, now people are willing to pay for it, and you'll be surprised at the results. And also we've seen a global dynamic where fake news is on social media and real news is behind paywalls. So people are now expecting real news and a transaction. I'm paying now for quality, for verified information. And yet we've been selling the wrong thing. We should stop selling ads and we should start selling our journalism. This is a very important insight that was shared with us with many of these 20 global publishers in this exercise of reimagining the news. We've been selling the wrong thing. Stop selling clicks. Stop selling programmatic. Stop selling clickbait and start selling your journalism. A big trend that we've seen globally is the trend to become a non-profit organization, to become a foundation. This is a big trend in America, and we think it's a bad idea, because if you become non-profit journalism, eventually somebody pays for it, and you will pay for it with your independence. You cannot have a free country in America, in India, without a free press. The press will not be free if it is not independent, and it will not be independent if it is not profitable and can stand on its own 2 feet. So the moment you become non-profit, you become a foundation, a charity, you become mendicant media. And a supplicant publisher cannot have a sustainable model. You depend on charity, and there's no such thing as free money. Some of the charitable contributions will eventually demand that you compromise on your independence. And this is a trend that we haven't seen it catch on in India, but beware of this trend, and it's not a good idea. So let me get into some of the content of the book now, and which, by the way, as Pradyuman mentioned, all of you listening to the presentation will get a copy of the book on digital format. And we have the monetization chapter. This is a chapter we've been updating every year because it's extremely popular, and is something that is urgent, particularly now that everybody is looking at digital transformation and thinking it was years away. Well, it's come very, very quickly. So in the past, we had 14 business models, and we've updated it this year. This is the new update, and these are some of the other 14 business models that you can pursue as a publisher. So if you bear with me, and if you look here, I'm going to try to point with my cursor here. So here we've listed all the models, and here you see the client focus, the income potential, the transaction costs, the profit potential, the requirements, and the risks. So this is a wonderful chart for you to follow. What are the business models that I can introduce to make this digital transformation happen? Well, we have the publisher as a paid content publisher. This is a B2C play. The income potential is very high. The transaction costs are mixed, middle, and the profit to potential is very, very high. These are some of the requirements and the risks. Of course, you can read it in the book. Another business model is the publisher as an emotional advertiser. This is a B2B play, and you can see all the ramifications of this. We also have the publisher as a data broker. You have all this incredible data. So in addition to a paywall, you should introduce this year a data wall. You can make a lot of money out of that data. How so? What is the play? How does it work? What are the investments? The publisher is a club, which is once you become a paid content publisher, once you have a data broker system and business, you can become a membership publisher, a club publisher. The publisher is a retailer. So this is e-commerce play. The publisher is an event organizer. You're very familiar with this. The publisher is a non-profit. Of course, I just talked about the demerit of becoming a non-profit, and yet for some very specific publishers, it could work. The publisher is an advertising agency. I'm sure that's something that Pradyuman has written a great deal about in the past, the trend towards branded content and the publisher becoming an ad agency, in developing an ad agency in-house. I know many of you are doing this in India, and it's fascinating to see the results. The publisher is a purveyor of time, another business model. This is where you stop selling clicks, volume, and you start saying time spent reading content, and you charge more for the time that people are spending. Then we have the publisher as a brand licensor. We have the publisher as an IT provider. This is a fascinating play for many of you in India. Obviously, India being the world's leading IT technology company in terms of production and the actual hard work. You know, a fantastic tie-in with Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley developing a great deal of these ideas and new things. India making it happening at a global speed and with great digital engineering genes. So this is companies selling their subscription digital models. These are companies selling their CMS systems, their CRM systems to other publishers and other companies. We've seen, of course, the great example of Amazon through the Washington Post selling its technology, its CMS, and so on. The publisher is an investor. This is you becoming an investor in startups, a very interesting play with great results. One that I love, and I think is very, very important for India, and many of you I know have found success with this business model, but there's a lot for you to develop, is the publisher as an educator. In a country like India, where you're lifting millions and millions of people out of poverty every single year and moving people up from middle class to upper middle class to becoming very wealthy, everybody's looking for advancement. Everybody's looking for an education, for an MBA, a master's, the latest in terms of education. Well, we've seen a lot of publishers becoming educators. And this is a great positioning for many of your brands. We have tremendous prestige. And not just the English language brands, but also the vernacular brands. And this could be done as a co-branding exercise, where it could be the Hindustan MBA or the Times marketing degrees and so on. And finally, the publishers and archivist. And this is a model based on nostalgia, which is also very powerful and working very well for many publishers globally. So I leave it to you to read in the book the latest on this. There's a lot of cases for you to peruse, but I want to go quickly to the overall strategy. As you've heard me say last year, you have to adopt at least 3 or 4 of these 14 proven business models for news publishers. 3 or 4. Obviously, one of them has to be, without a doubt, paid readership. And unless you get people to pay for your journalism and digital reader subscriptions, you really have no future. It's game over. You're not going to sustain this business through developing your audiences on Facebook. You're not going to develop and sustain this business with digital advertising. It will not work. You must get at least 40% of your revenue from readers. The paid content publisher is the most important innovation you must all be engaged with. Coincidentally, in the past year during the pandemic, my firm, Innovation, we've launched 45 paywalls globally, from Kenya to Brazil to Bolivia to Spain to Washington, DC. So many, many publishers launching even in the midst of a pandemic, because this is the most important thing you must undertake in the coming 12 months. The last thing we need are more visitors, are more clicks. What you need are paying customers. End of. So on this very important point, there's obviously the question of, so, okay, where do I start, you know? Because there's so many methods and, you know, there's a hard paywall, a metered, a freemium, a porous, a dynamic, a time, a non-profit, what to choose. So this year what we've done is we've done an entire chapter in the book called 10 Paywall Models. And this is the great ways you can generate revenue from subscriptions from readers. So if you don't mind, I'm going to take you through this very quickly. They're in the book, but I'm going to take you through them because it'll be surprising to you how interesting they are. So number 1 is the hard paywall. Of course, you're familiar with this. This is the Times, the FT, and the Economist. It's been around for a long time with great results. The Times of London has had tremendous success after a big drop in audiences, but a fantastic turnaround from losing 70 million to earning more than 3 million now. Number 2 is a meter paywall. You may be familiar with this. It's the New York Times, the Atlantic, Slate, Wired, many magazines going into this model with great results. The third paywall model is the porous paywall. El País, Irish Times have launched this during the pandemic with great results. So allows you to read many articles. And if you share the articles, you allow other people to read it. So it's porous, but it's metered as well. Number 4 is a dynamic freemium paywall. So there are many varieties of this. This is used by Expressen, L'Edition, and ZZ in Switzerland. You have finally the number 5 paywall is the time war paywall. So this is, you can read this, you have a limited amount of time to read an article. This has been introduced by Matt Sack at Meet Media and Boys in the US. We also have the hybrid metered freemium paywall. Aftenposten and Kauppalehti in Finland are using them. And the reason I'm sharing all these paywalls with you is because I'm sure every single publisher in India can adapt one of these business models to a freemium metered hybrid paid paywall. Number 7, the adaptive and individualized paywall. So once you get people to go through a data wall, you have their data, so you can share with them a specific adaptive and individualized paywall to them. The Wall Street Journal, Svenska Dagbladet are doing this. Number 8, the premium ad-free paywall. So this is a transaction. If you want an experience that has no advertising, you will have to pay for it. And very great success with the Information and the Athletic with this. Number 9 is the micro membership paywall. So you create verticals within your offering, and you create just membership for that. So the New York Times has spun off cooking, spun off crossword puzzles, and you only subscribe to that micro membership experience. And many magazine groups are doing this successfully. And the final paywall for you to consider is donation memberships. This is what I talked about, a little bit of the non-profit model. It's working for some, but we do not recommend it. And yet you could have a hybrid model where you introduce a bit of non-profit donation membership paywall models. Just to conclude, there are no instant digital miracles, but there are digital inflection points. And this is one of them. This is one of them. 2020 to 2021, it's a digital inflection points. All these trends have accelerated, all these trends have shown us a way forward that involves getting away from social media dependency, a way forward that involves getting people to pay for your content, a way forward that means you focusing on fact checking, a way forward that also means developing a digital first business concept and model while you become print unsustainable, develop finally that digital sustainability. And in all this, journalism matters. And you have to remind yourself of this and remind readers. It's mattered to them this year. It has mattered in a year where we're all so fragile, where our lives were threatened. We had to make life or death decisions based on real information. We have to still hold populist leaders to account. We have to search for real answers. There's finally a global recognition that independent quality journalism is valuable and people are willing to pay for it. This is the inflection point. You must seize this moment or you will lose it forever. Thank you very much. And as we say in London, think positive, but stay negative. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kwan. That's something that we say across the world. Think positive, but stay negative. You know, we have
Yes.
run out of time totally. There are a few questions that have come in. There's somebody who's pointed out that there was a Reuters and Oxford survey that showed some of the things which were in variance to what you said, but we'll take these questions later. I think you could send the questions to WAN-IFRA and they will direct it to Kwan and you will get the responses. Thanks very much, Kwan, for waking up early in the morning to speak to all of us. and delighted and look forward to your report.
Thank you very much. It'll be a real pleasure and honor, and I'm happy to answer these questions directly via email.
And those of you who are here, please step out and go back to the next session. I'll be there again with a very interesting session on branded content, etc. See you there. Thank you.
Thank you.